A very good evening to you, South African, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical, our digital audience joining us much later today. But the political parties are here for the first part of our discussion. They will weigh in a short while. Look, two big stories on our watch. One on a national front, the other on an international front, the US. First, the 2025 national budget has been tabled, but question, will it stand? This budget represents a vision of the future and a realistic assessment of the present, as well as the options available to us right now. Now, that's according to the man who presented it, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. His political home, the ANC, welcomes the budget proposal as a decisive intervention that prioritizes job creation, economic growth, and service delivery. The Democratic Alliance wanted a big bunker-busting bold dash for growth, as articulated by its leader and cabinet minister, John Steenhuisen. So they say they will not be supporting it in its current form. Now, the official opposition, Umkhonto we Sizwe Party, said that the minister had a number of options to explore, but the option the minister chose is the wrong one, going further to say that the increasing VAT by any percentage point is disastrous. The economic freedom fighters called it a shameful budget, saying it's the final nail in the coffin of the economic struggles facing the poor and working class. What about the Inkatha Freedom Party? Well, through its leader and also cabinet minister, Nkosini Hlabisa, saying that they support this budget, adding in part that if they decided to borrow this money, it would have been a burden to generations to pay back the money. So, those are the top 5 parties in the National Assembly by virtue of the votes garnered in last year's election. So, the question becomes, is there or will there be enough support to get the recently tabled budget in its current form, underline that, over the line? How will the recent sentiment form part of the calculus? It leads us to the question of the week, and we ask you, do you support the budget as it stands, or would you prefer changes before it's passed? I want you to share your thoughts with us. Let us know at SABC News_TV. Now, the other big story we have to talk about is South Africa's ambassador to the United States no longer being welcomed in that country, considered a persona non grata, a Latin phrase basically meaning unwelcome person. Was this move by the United States justified? What happens next? Stay tuned. We'll get you some experts and viewer perspectives towards the end of the program. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well at SABC News_TV. Perspective coming up. But first, I want to hear from you. What do you have to say? On our regular Word on the Street feature, we took to the city of Tshwane, seeking diverse insights and perspectives on this topic. And this is what people had to say. Take a look.
It leaves a bad taste in your mouth. One of the first few things that our new government of national unity does is take from the pockets that are already lacking.
They just took a shortcut to suss money out of individuals. The proposed increase on the VAT doesn't solve the current problems that we are facing as a country.
Unemployment is going to still get higher, not get lower. Because why? People are going to make more kids and not get a job because grants is higher.
As of now, the cost of living is very high. It's very costly. So I think that it shouldn't have gone up. My thing really is it only the government's responsibility to, make sure that the education budget is realized, or should the private sector maybe step in and help? Because look at what's in the picture, right? 76% is going where? To salaries. 24% is going to everything else. So in everything else, things like textbooks, workbooks, are those things going to be able to be funded?
If you look where we are now, things are difficult, especially the underprivileged people. So if you're going to increase budget, especially VAT, how's people going to survive in the end?
The VAT increase, it might be good for the people who earn more, but for the people who don't earn so that much, you can feel it that it's a burden to us.
I feel like most people, they take advantage of the grant money and everything, and then some of them, like, they stop going to schools and other things depending on that money.
Right, we have lined up a number of guests to help us unpack this, give you different perspectives and possibly path a way forward in terms of whether this budget will be passed or not. So we invited Sihle Zikalala, ANC NEC member. We're hoping that he joins us soon. We also have Karabo Khachao, DA spokesperson, EFF MP, Ngobile Mhlongo. We have Nhlanhla Khedebe, IFP chief whip. We also invited the MK party, but they weren't available. And we have chief economists at Antwisa Capital, Mialani Mkabela. Thank you very much indeed all for joining us. Maybe I should start with Karabo. VAT, sticky point. The proposal is the increase of VAT rate by 0.5 percentage point in 2025-26 and by another 0.5 percentage point the following year. Talk to us about why is the DA unhappy about this and what's the plan going forward?
Good evening, Ben. Good evening to South Africans. Our opposition remains the same. Our characterization of this budget is that it's absolutely mad. It is an unrealistic budget for South Africans. It does not meet what South Africans' reality is on the ground. The bottom line is that people already as it is do not have enough money to put food on the table for themselves and their families. The poor are unable to have 3 meals a day. If they have dinner, they can't have breakfast. And if they have breakfast, sometimes even the dinner, like the same day, can't even happen. Why? Because they don't have money to put food on the table for themselves and their families. So it is ridiculous altogether for a government to expect the same majority of its population who already does not have money, who are unemployed, to cough up more money to pay for food.
Right. Government also proposes that no inflationary adjustments to personal income tax brackets, also rebates and medical aid tax. Now, they're saying that these measures will raise about 28 billion in additional revenue in 2025-2026 and 14.5 billion in 2026-2027. Why is this not a good idea?
It doesn't make sense, because the ultimate, it's not, if you don't adjust anything according to inflation, then you're pretty much still taxing South Africans more than what they currently have in their pockets. You're pretty much having a backdoor increase of income tax for South Africans. South Africans who, in the middle class, majority of them who are able to pay tax, are also choking in debt. When by the time their salaries come in the morning, sunset comes and the whole salary is gone. And by the time that the salary is depleted, they are unable to have paid their full credits altogether, unable to pay petrol to go to the same work that they need to go to. So pretty much even the middle class in the country right now are living from hand to mouth, unable to make savings for their families for rainy days, and unable to choose the kind of schools that they want to take their children to because they can't afford those either. That's not a life of dignity. That's not a life that a working class is supposed to have. Yeah. That's not a life that we were promised 94 for majority of our South Africans. And so that budget in itself, in its reconfiguration, also still doesn't make sense.
Ngobile, is your party willing to negotiate with the ANC to get this budget over the line?
Good evening to you, Ben, and your viewers at home. The EFF has always been an open organization that seeks to address the injustices of the past and prioritize the working class of South Africa and the student populace and the youth of South Africa. We are willing to negotiate, provided that, one, there is no VAT increment. Number two, that
no VAT increase at all, or less than 0.5 percentage points?
No VAT increase at all, provided that there's no VAT increase at all. Number two, we want the DA and the FF Plus to be out of the equation, to be out of the GNU. We cannot serve in a government that has the Democratic Alliance and the FF Plus, for they are the same people who serve their own interests, the people who control the owners of the economy of South Africa. And working with them is the same as killing Chris Hani again. It is the same as bringing apartheid through the back door. Look what do they stand for? What is the policy of the Democratic Alliance when it comes to issues of international relations? What is the position of the Democratic Alliance when it comes to scrapping of the student debt? What is their position on that?
Well, let's deal with the issue at hand in terms of the VAT. If we don't get an increase via a VAT increase, or don't raise revenue via a VAT increase, where is the money going to come from?
Now, firstly, we must save. The EFF is proposing the following issues. One, we must build on state capacity. What is state capacity? Government must be able to provide the major services that government provides. Firstly, in terms of building road and housing, we must insource that service in order to save money that is wasted on entrepreneurs. We know for a fact, look, there's a road that they try to build now in Fezile Tabi of less than one kilometer. The road costed us 6 million rand. Money is being looted through entrepreneurs. We must build state capacity for government to be able to build roads, have the Department of Roads and Transport have an in-house company that deals with only building and maintenance of road. Department of Human Settlement have an in-house company that only deals with building of RTP and Philips houses, in order to save money that is generally wasted when tenders are issued. There's no tender that gets to be issued in South Africa and there's no scandal thereafter of prices being inflated or prices being manipulated for a certain purpose. So we must build state capacity so that we are then able to save money, and instead of money being misused when it comes to tenders, then we save the money. Number two, we must be able to control illicit financial flow. The minister did not say anything about controlling illicit financial flows of this country. How do we tax the rich, the big corporates that are operating in South Africa? How then do we collect proper tax from them?
Well, the minister said in his budget speech that increasing corporate or personal income tax rates would generate less revenue, and there's a potential here of harming investment and job creation. Are you willing to risk that?
There's no such a thing. Investors will not run away from South Africa. We are very rich in terms of mineral resources and the land. And another thing, what we must do, we need to fund properly SARS to be able to collect more tax. SARS says that there's over 1 million people who are not paying tax. We need to collect that tax. How do we collect it if SARS itself is understaffed, has no capacity to do so? We need SARS to be properly funded to be able to correctly correct tax and rebates from the people.
Let me get Nhlanhla Khadebe's perspective on this. Look, there's several persistent spending pressures here. We talk about health, education, transport, we're talking security. We need to raise some money, Nhlanhla. Was this the best available option? Talk about the VAT increase. Best available option on the table. If you can unmute, Nhlanhla. There we go. No, we're having an issue. Let's try one more time. No. All right. We'll try to fix up Nhlanhla Khadebe's line. Karabo, let me come back to you before I go to Mielani. And there's some pushback or some opinion from some quarters that are saying the fight for the DA, the fight against VAT has little to do about the increase, but has a lot to do with the need for a political win within the GNU for the DA. How do you respond to that?
The Democratic Alliance's fight against the ANC's VAT hike has everything to do with our commitment to ensuring that people are able to put food on the table for themselves and their families. That is that. We have a cost of living crisis in this country, and there's no sober political party that could ever want to advocate for such a proposal to then take more money out of the pockets of South Africans that they already do not have. Our commitment, Bain, has always been with South Africans. South Africans who majority of them are unemployed, a middle class that is also unable to make ends meet. That is where our commitment is. And we entered the government of national unity very clearly and we have communicated that our commitment is ensuring that we grow the economy and create jobs. Taxing South Africans further divides the nation. It further increases the levels of inequality that exists in this country. It does not alleviate poverty, it increases poverty altogether. And that is anti what the government of national unity is supposed to do. And that is why the Democratic Alliance is not backing down altogether. Because in us, South Africans have a voice, have a champion that can be able to be able to communicate what is is in their best interest.
So
and until we are
right.
able to find a budget B that reflects the best interests of South Africans, we will not budge.
If this is implemented in its current form in terms of the VAT, are you willing to go to the courts?
100%. By all means possible, we will fight it, because South Africans deserve somebody who will be able to fight against a madness that is the ANC's proposal right now. So there's nothing that we're not willing to do to make sure that South Africans get jobs, that their economy grows to sustain those jobs, that they're able to live lives of dignity, which if they're taxed further, as is the ANC's proposal, we will not be able to see.
Look, I must mention that we did invite the ANC. Sihle Zikalala did confirm he was supposed to be here. I'm not sure what's happening. Hopefully, if he's watching this, please, if you can, join in. We want to get your take on this matter. Let me bring in Nhlanhla Radebe. Hopefully, we can hear you much better now, sir. Look, I was talking about this several persistent spending pressures that we are currently faced with in terms of health, in terms of education, transport, security. We need revenue ASAP. Was this the best available option? The IFP sits within the Government of National Unity. What was the discussions around this?
Well, thank you so much, and greetings to you and your viewers and the colleagues. As the IFP, we recognize that in the short term, this was a necessary step to prevent excessive borrowing and maintain fiscal stability. And consequently, we feel that had the government chosen to borrow more money instead of adjusting revenue sources, it would have placed an unstable debt burden on future generations. So this is how we feel. And given
can you hear us?
That's Mr. Zikalala. Continue, Nhlanhla.
Yeah, I was saying that given the already rising public debt, the 0.5 VAT increase for 1 year at a minimum is a more responsible alternative for further to further borrowing. That's how we feel, yes.
We're just trying to clear up Sihle Zikalala's line in a bit. Let me bring in Mialani into the conversations. I see you shaking your head, Karabo. I'll get your take in a short while. Mialani, help us understand in terms of the VAT Act. Can the Finance Minister go ahead and proceed with this VAT hike without majority parliamentary support? What does the VAT Act say?
Can you hear me?
Let's mute Mr. Zikalala till we get a clear line on him, please. Mialani, pick it up.
Am I audible? I'm sorry that I can't hear you.
All right, it seems like we're having gremlins. You know what, Lucia, if it's fine with you, let's take a quick break. We'll clear up the line. I know it might be frustrating for you as the viewer to listen to the interruptions, but let's fix up that line with Mr. Sihle Zikalala. We need his take, so it's important that we get him on the program. Quick break, more next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Let's remind you about the question of the week. We're asking you, do you support the budget as it stands, or would you prefer changes before it is passed? Let us know at SABC News_TV. A number of guests joining us. One of them was supposed to be Sihle Zikalala, ANC NEC member. We're having a bit of an issue with his line. When we do connect with him, we'll bring him into the conversation. I want to pick up where we left off, Mialani Mkabela, who is an economist. I want to know, with regards to the Finance Minister going ahead and proceeding with this VAT hike without majority parliamentary support, can he do that? What does the VAT Act say?
Thanks, and viewers of SABC and the colleagues that have joined us in this program. When you look on the trade-offs in a stagnant economy that we have, you will find that the economy hasn't been growing for more than 10 years. And the only two revenue streams that have been pulling South Africa better, it has been personal income tax and VAT, which are the two leading. And then we have already noted that corporate income tax has decreased to levels that are not attractive because the profits of companies have increased, or the companies are not able to have a possible net profit. So in that regard, it was difficult for the National Treasury to come up with a budget. The alternatives that they have, if we give it trade-offs, which one could be VAT, and then the other, it could be government debt.
Right.
So when you look on our debt, already we are servicing our debt with more than 22% just to service the debt. And that speaks to a part where you find the economy is not really resilient to create more revenue. And then when you look on the compromise that have been made, yes, it was very unstrategic to increase tax of value-added tax with 2%. But in repentance that the ANC might have done to increase value-added tax with 0.5%, I think to me that is more reasonable for almost every South African.
Right.
Precisely because increasing government debt is something that could cost the country. We are taking a long-term debt, servicing a very short-term situation.
Mielani, but just with regards, I understand that point, but in terms of the implementation of this, and it might form part, I'm assuming, I'll get back to Karabo Kakao in a short while, part of their legal challenge going forward in understanding this. Can the Minister of Finance go ahead with a VAT hike without a majority parliamentary support? Do you have an understanding on that? Or is it unclear?
So, like, I get your point. I get your point. So, like, what the ANC and the GNU have to do is to agree in their committees about the one, the point. The 0.5% increase. It's not something that the ANC could do by themselves. They don't have majority. So the committees or GNU has to agree around that element. It's not an issue of like law that could be a tax law. It is an issue of the political parties that are there to get a majority from the sitting MPs.
Right. I was going to.
I think that is what it needs to be done. But the point that I would like to indicate as well, I think the parties that have formed GNU, they need to understand what is critical for the economy. The most critical part for the economy is economic stability. And then for Democratic Party and the other parties that are in the GNU, when they don't agree, automatically they will be pushing the country to economic instability. And I think that it will cost the country something that we are not going to manage in a very short term. It's something that I will have to warn them. They need to just went back around that, because the whole discussion, the poor is the one that is getting this 0.5%.
Correct.
The people that are against the 0.5% are not really the poor, are the people that are earning very well, who are not really interested to add on the burden that the country is facing. So it is not really practical to put this as a psychological element that 0.5% increase it will affect the poor. That is
all right. Let's put that
the poor and the people that are unemployed will be affected by the economic instability that will be caused by political parties that are not agreeing.
Point taken,
in passing
Point taken.
Budget.
I'll put that to Sisha Zegelala. I think we've managed to clear up his line. Just to my former point, Parliament, I was reading a document from SARS saying that Parliament would have to pass legislation giving effect to the announcement within 12 months for it to have a permanent effect. That's the VAT hike. Sisha Zegelala with us tonight. tonight. You heard what Mielani Mkabela has said. He's worried about the stability in terms of economic confidence in this country. The VAT, of course, a sticky point. The proposed hike. Is the ANC fully united behind this proposal as the best possible option to get us to stability?
Well, firstly, the ANC welcomed the presentation of the budget by the minister as proposal for discussions to all members of parliament as coming from their respective parties. We welcome the contributions that are being made publicly by the society, secondly by members of respective parties. The African National Congress would have not loved to see the increase in the VAT in particular. It has been our view that we must cushion South Africans, especially the poor and the middle class, from any taxation. However, the events have led us to be here where we are. These events are not only emanating from today, these are historical evolution and issues that have evolved in the public domain.
Right.
How we go forward should be in the interest of all of us as the country and the government of South Africa. Of primary importance will be the stability in the country, to keep a united government and to ensure that we meet the three priorities that the GNU have agreed on. Firstly, the GNU on its own came into being when everyone, or when most of the people had lost hope. People were saying South Africa will be ungovernable, right. We might fail to form the GNU or any form of government. We manage as different parties to put aside petty politics and deal with the real issues that faced South Africa. That is the call even today.
Right.
People may not like that, which the ANC does not appreciate. But for the stability and the future of our country, we believe that this is the mechanism, it is the instrument we can put in place now so that we continue to engage on how we ensure that there is an economic growth that will address any possible.
Well, let's speak about the stability in the future and the GNU as a whole. How, if you wholeheartedly, as the ANC, believe that this is the best possible way, how do you plan to get this budget over the line without the support of the DA?
Well, we believe that all parties that are in the GNU must be engaged. And it is in our interest to engage with parties that are in the GNU firstly, but with parties that are in parliament as a whole. We will engage with parties in the GNU primarily because they are in government. They have signed a statement of intent to ensure that there is economic growth, to ensure that there is a cushion to the poor and addressing the cost of living, to build a strong government.
Right.
Those are three priorities. So firstly, when we engage with these parties that are 10 in total, it does not limit us there. We will further engage even those parties that are not in the GNU so that we have a maximum consensus to pass the budget.
Right. Are you worried, Karabakakau, that they can go, the ANC that is, without the DA? Are you worried that we could see very soon a significant reconfiguration of the GNU?
Look, what I think the worry here is South Africans worry about the composition of its government, one, and its ability to safeguard their interests, to deliver to them that which they need. What South Africans need is a government that is 100% focused on growing the economy, creating jobs, and making sure that South Africans live dignified lives. That is certainly not the ANC's interest altogether. It is not the EFF's interest that boldly say that. And that is why we find ourselves in the conversations that we find ourselves right now. Let me first clarify one thing that Zigalala spoke about. He says a series of events have led us here today with this budget that they're proposing. The series of events that led us here is that in the past 31 years, the ANC has chowed state funds. None of them are in jail. None of them have been taken to account as far as the wasteful expenditure of state funds is concerned. And part of the proposal that we've given them as an alternative to taxing South Africans is dealing with wasteful expenditure in government. We have ghost employees across many departments and many municipalities in this country that if you could identify and deal with them, you would be able to save money there that you don't need to tax South Africans for. We said to them that they must.
Let me bring in Ngobile Karabo. I'll come back to you in a short while. Is the factor of the DA the only hindrance for you in terms of joining the government of national unity? Having said that, by extension, what is your compromise in supporting the current budget in its current form?
We have explained that VAT is a no-go area, VAT increment is a no-go area. Number two, there ought to be state capacity. Number three, we must cut down on the deputy ministers. There are no jobs for deputy ministers. We want South Africa to tighten their belts, but the government is not willing to tighten their belts. The executive is bloated. There's so many deputy ministers. If you ask them what is their role, even when they come to parliament, they can't answer questions. Therefore, there's no need for them. Cut down the cabinet so that we save money. We'll save millions when you cut down the cabinet. Right. And the issue of VAT is a no-go area for us. If there's VAT increment, really, we can't subject South Africans to becoming more poorer and not being able to afford basic needs, basic foods that they can put for themselves on the table.
And Tata Khadebe, creative ways, that's been the call. Creative ways to raise revenue rather than increasing VAT. You heard the suggestion, reducing the size of the cabinet as a way of saving money, reducing the amount of deputy ministers as a way of saving money. Would the IFP support this?
Well, the question would be, has that been proven that if you reduce the number of deputy ministers, you can save? And the next question would be, how much would you be saving if you decrease the number of deputy ministers? I mean, there are a lot of things that we can think of and discuss as political parties that form part of the National Assembly and the government of national unity in particular. But I'm not sure if the argument that says the decrease in the number of deputy ministers can address the situation that we find ourselves in as a country. Yes.
Mialani, there's been mentioned in the budget a number of ways in terms of cushioning households. They spoke about providing social grant increases that are above inflation, expanding the basket of VAT zero-rated food items. We also heard about not increasing the fuel levy for another year, and it'll save consumers around, what, 4 billion rand or so. Good enough? Mialani, that was for you? No. Okay. We're having some desperate issues here with regards to our technicals. Let me bring in Karabo. Karabo, with regards to the issues of policy and legislation, red bad. Mr. Zigalala, I'll come back to you in a short while. Karabo, the issue of policy and legislation, red lines. We've had the Bella now, with regards, from a DA perspective, the Bella Act, the Expropriation Act. When is the DA going to say, look, enough is enough, we tried, we out?
The DA will walk out the minute we think it's no longer practically possible for us to be that which we promised to be to South Africans. When we campaigned for our elections in the previous year, we said that we want to rescue South Africans, rescue them from the clutches of the modern day oppressors that the ANC are, rescue them from the clutches of poverty, rescue them from the clutches of an ineffective government that is unable to cater for their basic living needs. And that is what our fight every day in cabinet remains to be. And that is for as long as we are of the opinion that we are able to be that which South Africans need us to be, and which we have been since we've taken office. For as long as we are able to do so, we will fight for South Africans. And for as long as FedEx hasn't said to take a decision to say we are walking away, then we are still here. I also wanted to be clear, Bain, there's a remark that was made in the past that there must be engagement within political parties because we signed a statement of intent. That is true. And that is why from the onset of the budget conversation, the Democratic Alliance has always been made it clear that, one, we do not support a VAT hike, but we've also given alternative solutions on how we can reconfigure the budget. The only thing that the ANC needs to do is to copy, paste, and roll it out. Their inability to be able to cut down on wasteful expenditure while being able to find creative ways to roll out revenue, to roll out revenue collection strategies is what is standing in our way. Their sheer arrogance and their inability to consider South Africans is the problem.
Sihle Zikalala, are you open to talks of these alternatives, these suggestions, as the ANC?
Firstly, the ANC is prepared to talk to all parties in Parliament. We will talk to them in a form of the GNU. We will talk to them at a party-to-party level. We respect all parties that are in the GNU and all parties that are in Parliament. But there shouldn't be a single party that thinks it has a monopoly of knowledge and solutions. All of us, we should bring to the table proposals and discuss and emerge with the best. Some of the people, especially some of the indoctrinated Africans who are co-opted by the racist, always become the mouthpiece of the racist. And they fail to acknowledge the realities in front. I can count many who are now part of the history, who never appreciated before that they were misused. And history will tell you. Let's look on issues as they are, scientifically so. Honorable Hadebe Upungane is asking a question. Is it proven that reducing cabinet and the executive, including doing away with deputies, will bring a solution or not? I said in our last discussion with the colleagues here, if the one that debate from where I stand as a person, my first point will be make a city of parliament and the city of government one. Align the city of parliament and the seat of government, and you will see how much you will reduce.
Right.
But I was saying that cautioned in my mind of political factors that made South Africa to agree that Pretoria remains the city of government and Cape Town remains the seat of parliament. So we must analyze things factually and in reality as they are.
Right.
And let us not be hypocritic. And let's not be hypocritic in our engagement here.
There's a practical solution by Sihle Zikalala. A practical solution by Sihle Zikalala from the ANC. You back that?
You will remember that the EFF in the 6th Parliament seek to introduce a private members bill in order to relocate Parliament from being in Cape Town to go to the seat of Tshwane. It was a private members bill that was introduced by the economic freedom fighters in the 6th Parliament, even though it did not go through all the proper stages to be seen and finally brought back to Parliament. But that was a proposal that was brought by the economic freedom fighters. It's also in the founding manifesto of the EFF that we must have one capital city, which is the seat of Tshwane, to house the Parliament and a government.
Right.
Look, now, Parliament is operating from a dome. It's business as usual. We're not in the original buildings of Parliament. So it proves that Parliament can be relocated to go anywhere. But also these deputy ministers, they are earning a salary. They've got cars, they've got bodyguards. It cannot be true that if we cut down on the deputy ministers, we will not be saving money. We'll save lots, millions on a monthly basis in terms of salaries and benefits that goes to these deputy ministers. That is a fact.
Let me give last word. We fast run out of time.
It's going to be zero rated. It's not completely true. Bread is making a bakery. At the bakery, they use electricity. Price of electricity has gone up, meaning that price of bread is also going to go up, whether we like it or not. Price of bread from the 1st of May will go up because electricity would have gone up.
Mr. Zigalala, I'll let you respond. I'm going to give the last word to Nhlanhla Kadebe. Mr. Zigalala?
Yeah, yes. Firstly, I didn't say it is a proposal that there must be one city of government. I'm saying any suggestion must come with clear motivations, not just posturing and grandstanding. And that must be understood clearly. As the ANC, we welcome the contribution. One, let us cut in terms of spending. Let us find all ghost workers all over. Let us ensure that there is realignment and cost efficiency in the work of government. Let us spend on supporting the development and the growth of the economy. Let us cushion the poor who are suffering. And those are the views of the ANC. Others who want to grandstand can grandstand on their own, but the reality is that we're faced by the situation. Let us sit down and discuss calm and let us reason with each other.
Nhlanhla Hadebe, how do you see this proceeding? Very briefly, the Parliament's Finance Committee will be in sharp focus. Talk to us about your opinion in terms of how this unfolds, very briefly.
Well, in the Finance Committee, as the IFP, we will support the budget as presented by the Minister, because on the fundamental principle that a responsible budget must strike a balance between economic growth and social development, we will support it. And we believe and we call, we call on everyone that we need to have a working country, a progressive country, as some would say they are a progressive something. So we need to see that progressive action in making sure that the country progresses to where it must go.
Thank you so much for your time. We'll obviously be watching these parliamentary portfolio committees very, very closely. We'll bring you back if we need in terms of perspective, helping the viewers understand how this all impacts them and their families. Thank you very much indeed. Value added. All right, we need to take a break. When we come back, another hot topic, SA relations with the United States of America. Ebrahim Rasool, Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool, considered a persona non grata. What does that mean? Next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Look, it seems like there's seldom a dull day when it comes to geopolitics of late. South Africa's relationship with America is still very much in the spotlight. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying South Africa's ambassador to the United States, Ebrahim Rasool, is no longer welcomed in that country. The presidency reacted by saying it's regrettable, the expulsion, and has urged all relevant and impacted stakeholders to maintain the established diplomatic decorum in their engagements with the matter. Now, what does this all mean when it comes to South Africa's current and future relationship with America? I want to bring in international relations expert Dr. Oscar van Heerden. Also joining us is our digital audience as well. They'll weigh in a short while. Doc, good to have your better mind on this program for some perspectives. Rubio describing Rasool as a race-baiting politician who hates America and its president, Donald Trump, POTUS, as they say. Talking to our show in Bryce piece on the record, Ambassador Rasool was saying that he has been through tougher situations and is confident that he will survive this, and the country mustn't lose momentum being built. In your educated opinion, sir, declaring Ambassador Rasool a persona non grata, was that justified?
No, absolutely not. It was not justified. You know, if anyone knows the history of Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool, a champion of the anti-apartheid struggle and for a non-racial, non-sexist and democratic South Africa, to simply accuse him of being a racist and race baiting is misplaced in the extreme. I think that regardless of what the ambassador would have said or would have analyzed, they were looking to find fault with him, and that's why they lifted out of the input that he did with Mistra. They lifted the bits that they didn't agree with, when in fact, if you listen to the ambassador throughout his input at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflections, you will know that and you will see that he was actually very much advocating for engagement, constructive engagement with the Trump administration, keeping the door open, not having megaphone diplomacy, and so on and so forth. But none of that is mentioned. They only want to talk about the issues that they find fault with.
So having said that, what do you think is the Trump administration's endgame here as it relates to South Africa?
Unfortunately, South Africa is the guinea pig. South Africa is being used as the example in so many ways. By expelling Ambassador Rasool, the United States and the State Department is sending a clear message to all other embassies in Washington, D.C. Toe the line, be quiet, otherwise you will face similar steps of expulsion and being declared persona non grata. Secondly, they are targeting South Africa, as I've said before, Bain, because we are the junior partner within the BRICS formation, and they're saying to the BRICS Plus members, not necessarily the Big Four, but to the big BRICS Plus, that this is what we do to South Africa and we can do it to you too. And so on and so forth. So I'm saying that we are in the crosshairs with the Trump administration. Regardless of what we do is going to be misstep. No one that the DERCO, our Department of International Relations and Cooperation, sends to replace Ebrahim Rasool is going to be acceptable, bar a situation where, for example, the president decides to send a white person from the Democratic Alliance to Washington, D.C. Perhaps that person will be acceptable to the Trump administration.
So having said that, do you feel that the Trump administration has made up their mind already about South Africa, and whatever is said now will make little difference? Sending the next ambassador to the United States, how should that person be chosen? What sort of factors and attributes should we look at?
Look, I mean, before we sent Rasool, it was about a senior diplomat. It was about a seasoned diplomat, someone who understands the corridors of power within the establishment in Washington, D.C. So the unfortunate part, Bain, is that regardless of who we send, it is not going to be to the muster of the Trump-Musk coterie. It's just not going to. Whether we send whoever we might want to send, they are going to find fault with that person because they've decided that they are taking issue with South Africa, even if that issue is based on untruths and misinformation.
Right. Let's bring in our digital audience, get their take on this matter with regards to the United States. I want to hear from Dimakatso. Dimakatso, your take, how should South Africa move forward from your perspective?
Well, moving forward, I think we need to have a clear operation in terms of what we want to achieve in our relationship with the United States. And with that said, we also need to understand the practicality and what the essence of diplomacy is. In my opinion, the views shared by the ambassador were very much to the political side. And if you're representing a country such as South Africa in such a time, the messaging needs to be aligned with what the country and the country's objectives are. Yeah. And I think that wasn't very much seasoned for us in that regard. So we need to be critical of essential trade options that we have on the table as well going forward with the next ambassador that we'll be sending to America.
Ruth, agree, disagree?
I agree, honestly. And to just add on to that, I think, as Oscar has mentioned, whatever South Africa does will be an issue because the US seems to be retaliatory, honestly, because of the ICJ court case and also because of the land policy that they seem to find an issue with. So going forward, South Africa needs to understand that there needs to be a new strategy of engagement with the United States, and it needs to be tailored to the Trump administration, because clearly if it's going to be done in such a way that US-SA relations are going to be retaliatory, hostile, then there needs to be a new method of engagement, to be frank.
Yeah. Lungile, in your perspective, what sort of new strategy can be adopted?
Thank you, Emin. You remember that our bilateral contract is still valid. What now needs to be done is for DERCO, in order for them to deploy another ambassadors in order for us to tighten our relationship, because there will be implication which we have to suffer at the end of the day. Yeah. But also as a South Africa, we must advance the interest of the people. We transform our legislature. For us to pass the Bill of Expropriation Act is to advance our transformation. Unlike whenever we take action, we have to suffer the consequences. We are advancing the transformation of our people. Thank you.
Musa, do you value South Africa's relationship with America as a citizen of this country?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think it is very important, or rather critical, for us to can analyze this diplomatic relationship between the USA and South Africa, because it is very important for us to understand that diplomacy is the highest form for states to can form relationships. And the USA coming to South Africa like a bully, first starting from the expropriation bill, then coming to removing its funding from for aid. It proves to us that in certain ways the USA is trying to influence the decisions of South Africa in its stance to the war in Palestine, the war in Ukraine, South Africa, taking a more neutral approach. Yeah. So I think South Africa should put itself first, the same way the USA is doing.
Right. All right, let's leave it there. I got a feeling we're going to talk about this much more often in the weeks and months to come. I want to thank international relations expert Dr. Oscar van Heerden. Thank you so much for your perspective, sir, as well as the digital audience. Look, we've got to go, but here's my take. The presidency says South Africa remains committed to building a mutually beneficial relationship with the United States of America. That also talks to the importance of America as a strategic trading partner. Look, in terms of the economy, South Africa is on a growth journey. You heard that being mentioned in the budget speech. So, a couple of questions. How will the approach or the stand taken by the United States affect this country's journey to prosperity? How do we chart a way forward that allows South Africa to achieve material benefits, not only from a national perspective, but also an international one as well? It's probably factors that need to form part of the calculus when taking a helicopter view of this country's economy. And that's my take. If you miss anything on this program, be sure to watch It's Topical on YouTube as well as SABC Plus. Trends Travel up next. I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.